Let's have a look at a backlog in Scrum. Specifically, I'm using a tool called the Scrum Manager, which I've actually created using Notion. So I've created a Notion template where you're able to manage your development delivery using the Scrum framework inside one single view, and that's the Scrum Manager, which I've created here. But for purposes of this video, we're just looking at backlogs really as a kind of like first port of call of those things that you want to deliver as part of your product or service. It's a living, breathing part of the Scrum Manager uh, at the beginning of your project. No doubt, at least prior to sprint one, you may wish to uh, insert or load what you currently know to be the user stories that needs to be built or developed. And subsequently, throughout further sprints, you may learn more about the product that you're developing, and additional user stories can be added to the backlog, either to stay for future consideration, in which case you would not have a sprint applied to that backlog item. Or you may want to insert straight into a sprint. We've got three examples of three different user stories already in this particular view. User story 1, 2, and 3, and the description. As I've stated here, typically the user story description would be written in the form, as a user, I want something so that something. But this is not a live development board, as it were. This is just for example. So I've just put in a couple of kind of standard placeholders there for the description. So what we have is the user story name, the description, estimate story point. So what's the estimate? How big is this particular delivery expected to be? What's the priority? What is the sprint that we wish to allocate this particular story to, and what's the status of the story itself? So for a new backlog item, we could add something here, test user story 4, and then a description, test user story 4, description. And again, ideally, you'd write this in a notation that could be clearly understood by everyone and connects what you're doing with an actual benefit. So that's why we use this as a I want so that notation here, and I would recommend that you do the same for the descriptions. You can add additional fields, at least in terms of this template and any other commercial software here. In terms of the Notion template I've created, you just click on open and you can add a property of type text and add a further breakdown in terms of requirement. So specifically, you might want to add one or more acceptance criteria for the particular user story. And that's something that I've done before. And I've used the notation given, when, then notation in terms of the acceptance criteria. But in terms of this example, we're just using a user story description. We'll put in our estimate and story point. So one story point being the smallest chunk of value that we could potentially deliver as part of this project or software delivery. So I'll assume it's twice the size of the smallest thing that can be delivered. I'll assign a priority here. So I'll say this is a should have. So it's not must have. So potentially this is something that we wouldn't necessarily do initially in terms of prioritization. And as I'm just showing how we would insert a backlog item, I'm not going to allocate a sprint here. But in the event that you wanted to allocate this to sprint 1 or sprint 2, probably do not think out or plan much further out than the the current stroke next sprint. So say we're in sprint 1 at the moment, I wouldn't necessarily, as a course of good practice, allocate the sprint to be sprint 3 or sprint 4. That's just too far out. And we want to maximize the kind of work in progress of the development team. But effectively, this is what I would do for a backlog item, adding a backlog item. Again, the information depth, the depth of the information that I want to document here is all possible using this this Notion template. This is why I use it. I think it's a very good vehicle for delivering small to middle size software programs. So I like to use this myself. I've created it. I'm very used to it. But that's a little bit about backlog creation and management using this Scrum Manager in Notion. I hope you find this useful. Thank you.